purchases and keep guns out of prohibited people's hands. In addition, the costs associated with this can all be lessened, as we've seen in some of the amendments that have taken place. And expanding the definition that Dr. Softstream talked about with regard to those who are mentally ill is a very important protection in this law. The bill before you here today are reasonable restrictions that we in public safety do believe can make a very big difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the Judiciary and Health and Government Operations Committee. I'm pleased to join my colleagues today, Mr. Schellenberger. I'm the state's attorney from Prince George's County, Angela also Brooks, and I'm here to offer my support for the Governor's Firearm Safety Act of 2013. Like so many others, I am here today to support reasonable restrictions on handguns and assault weapons. And I believe that it is our moral obligation to protect those who are mentally ill in our society from possessing handguns. This area in particular is one that I feel especially passionate about. I believe that it is not only our obligation to protect those who would harm others, but part of what I feel so strongly about is I believe we have a moral obligation to those who suffer from mental illness from harming themselves as well. In 2012, my office prosecuted a total of 46 homicide cases. In 65% of those cases, a handgun was used. That means that 65% the handguns that were used in our county destroyed lives. We were there to watching them day in and day out. And in the vast majority of those cases, those handguns were acquired illegally. That means they were sold on the street or were stolen. We've had, I don't know how many of you have heard, over the last school year alone, we've had 6 students in our school system who have been gunned down in our streets. And in most of those cases, those handguns, once again, were illegally obtained. We have to do something. I think that we can all agree that there are simply too many illegal guns and way too much gun violence in our state and in our nation. We hear over and over again about the terrible mass shootings in Colorado, Connecticut, and other places across the country. Well, I believe that the Maryland legislature is in a very unique position to take much needed action. We are seconds away, in many cases, from seeing the same sorts of violence that we see all across the country. Gandhi once said that a nation's greatness is measured by how it treats its weakest members. And no doubt, most especially, that those who suffer from mental illness are among our society's weakest members, and we have an obligation to do what we can for them and for their families. About 3 weeks ago, many of you may have heard about a young man at the University of Maryland who used a gun to kill his roommate and to injure another. This case, once again, I believe was a textbook example of what happens with firearms and mental illness. Prior to purchasing the firearm that he used, the shooter in the case was committed to a mental facility for 4 days to undergo a mental evaluation. Shortly after that evaluation, he went out and purchased his first handgun, a 9mm handgun. And let's be clear, he didn't do so because he was an evil man. He did so because he was suffering from a mental illness, and that illness caused him to feel that he was in danger. He went a few months after that, and in January of this year, went out to purchase a Uzi. And because of his illness, his situation continued to cause him to use that gun to kill 2 very innocent students at the University of Maryland. And I have to tell you that for as tragic as it was, and it is absolutely tragic, we were moments away from him using that gun to go up onto that university campus and using it. It had a capacity of 20 rounds in it. And I don't know how we could excuse it, but he could have been up on that campus and we would have easily seen what we've seen all across the country. In another case, a man living in Anne Arundel County, calling himself the Joker, merely days after the Colorado movie theater shooting, telephoned the Prince George's County, Prince George's County employer, and essentially made death threats against managers and employees. Fortunately, the Prince George's County police intervened, searched his home, and removed more than 20 guns and upwards of 3,000 rounds of ammunition. And when the police responded to his home that day, he answered the door with a T-shirt on that said, "Handguns don't kill people, I do." He needed treatment. We got him that treatment, but it really is simply too much. And so I believe that Governor O'Malley has laid out a sensible and balanced approach to gun regulation in Maryland. His proposal would achieve the goal of everyone, reducing gun violence in our state by reducing the number of illegal guns on the street, and I hope that this legislature takes the opportunity to act on this very important matter. And again, I just have to say to you, as a person who stands in the courtroom, and Mr. Schellenberger does as well, to hold in my arms mothers whose sons have been killed, gunned down, whose children have been taken from them, it is simply not enough to say there's nothing we can't do. I agree with Mr. Schellenberger that there has to be some middle ground that we can all agree upon that is reasonable but reduces the carnage that we see every single day. So thank you so much for your consideration, and thank you for hearing from me on this important issue.
They turned it on. I heard you say that guns are taking the lives of, and I want to talk strictly about assault weapons, your list of assault weapons. You made the comment that, I wrote it down, guns take the lives of many of our citizens here in Maryland. I'm looking at the UCR, which is the Uniform Crime Report from the FBI, and I'm looking back from 2011, 2010, 2009. I mean, I could go back further, and the numbers are all the same. 2011, we had 398 murders in the state of Maryland. 2 of them were killed with rifles. Now, we don't know if they're assault rifles or they're just rifles. Even if it was assault rifles, that's less than 0.5% of murders, too. In fact, there were 75 killed with knives and 17 killed with hands. And it goes on and on. The same numbers go back, 424, and there was 1 killed by a rifle back in 2010. I just don't see where the correlation is between banning our citizens from buying these assault weapons and saving the lives. The numbers just don't show it, and I mean, these are the FBI statistics. So where's that correlation between, you know, the saving lives and the banning
provided from the FBI's uniform crime reports that show that since the expiration of the federal ban, that nationwide 461 Americans have been killed by
Quit masturbating.
Of these 461, at least 35 were police officers. Those are the numbers I was provided. How many in Maryland? I mean, I don't think I mean, I suppose if you could take a chance and do nothing, and hope that maybe we would not be affected by the sort of mass shootings that have happened in other places. Or we can learn from what's happened in Colorado. We can learn from what's happened in Wisconsin. We can learn from what's happened in Newtown, and put in place reasonable restrictions on military-style assault weapons that are designed for the battlefield.
Well, first off, we're talking, this is a Maryland bill, this isn't the United States bill. Actually, Chief Johnson was a patrolman in the Essex district. I worked right next door to him when he came on the job.
Was he hard-working even then?
Well, he did have a nickname, but we won't go there. But I just don't see where, you know, I mean, we're taking the, you know, you're making this, I guess, the assumption, and, you know, and we're taking the guns away from citizens. I mean, most of these cases we're talking about are criminals. I mean, they're not our citizens that are doing that. They're not killing the gun, you know, the people with these assault weapons. These people are just, they're sportsmen. They like to go out and shoot. I got a call from one of our retired guys, Kenny Ziegler. I know you know Kenny very well. I mean, he goes out and shoots on a weekly basis. He's got a lot of these guns. He's got 50 guns in his house, he says. I mean, he's just a collector. He likes to shoot. And this, the numbers don't prove that we should be restricting them.
We're here to help. Well, actually, we're not taking any of Kenny Ziegler's guns.
No, you're not. Okay, but he won't be able to purchase any more in the future.
Well, you know, I would think that, you know, I hope the 50 that he has are fine, because we're not taking anybody's guns away. We're not taking anybody's guns away. Let's say it one more time. We're not taking anyone's guns away. Kenny Ziegler. With the bill we have.
Okay.
Those 50 guns stay in Kenny Ziegler's house. We're not taking those away. But what we are saying is, let's pretend nobody has been killed in Maryland by an assault weapon. Let's just say nobody. Why do you want to wait for the first one? I'm sure there was nobody in Newtown, Connecticut before a year ago. So, so the point is, to take action now. And as you know, as well as I do, being a retired police officer, the high capacity